everyone, and welcome back to the channel and to another video from up here in Scandinavia. After a couple of days of motorway driving, we found ourselves back on the quiet rural roads of Sweden, looking for a place to camp for the night. This is where I decided to start filming the trip, so I launched the drone and well, this happened. I managed to crash into the top of a 50-foot pine tree, and all we could do was stand underneath the tree looking up at it with no way of reaching it. And I went to sleep that night pretty annoyed with myself, but luckily the wind really picked up during the night and I found the drone lying on the ground at first light. No visible damage, so I put it in the car and left it to dry out for a day or two. So the first night of this trip, we slept in the car by the motorway in Denmark, and then after last night's wild camp, we decided to book into a campsite for the night. And we have an app on our phone for the northern lights, and it looked like there was some activity due, so I set the GoPro up on the back of the truck and managed to record just a faint display of the lights passing over us as we slept. The further north we drive, the autumn colours became more obvious, and we were lucky enough to see a moose by the side of a forest road, although it didn't hang around for long. We were driving through a fairly large stretch of forest, and we had no problem at all finding another spot to camp for the night, with a good breeze as well to keep the insects at bay. It was at this point I decided the drone had had enough time to dry out, so I powered it up, and I was really happy that it was 100% functional. Morning everyone. So that was an uneventful wild camp. We didn't hear any moose, we didn't hear any bears, we didn't see the northern lights, but around half an hour ago, I'm not sure if the microphone's picking the noise up, some forestry workers just came up the track and they've started to use the machinery. So we've got a coffee on the go and then we'll just pack up. I've got the tent down already and then we'll head off. We crossed the Gutulia bridge in glorious sunshine. This fantastic stretch of coastline was once weighed down under the continental ice sheet, but once that retreated, a little under 10,000 years ago, a process of post-glacial rebound occurred, allowing the land beneath to rise over 280 metres. It still rises every year, but just around 8 millimetres, and the area has its own multi-day trail, the Gutulia Trail, which we wandered along for an hour, and the visitor centre has plenty of geological information and a pretty decent cafe as well. But after having a good look around for the day, we drove back off into the woods to find somewhere to camp for the night. So I brought the folding fire pit with me for this trip. It's a nice lightweight fire pit. It's not really that cold on the evening, so I didn't anticipate to be having a fire that often, but there's still quite a few mozzies around, so I've just cut some damp pine, so when dusk sets in we'll get a small fire on the go just to create a cloud of smoke to deter them, hopefully. so it's about 5 to 8. It looks pretty dark on camera, but there's still a bit of light in the sky, especially behind us there in the north. And we've just checked the app, and there's a really good chance of seeing the northern lights from about 50 kilometres north of where we are. So I think we're going to see them. Like, you can almost see them coming in the sky behind us. So I'm going to set the GoPro up anyway on a night lapse. That should hopefully capture it if they come in the next couple of hours. And yeah, it's early doors, so we're just going to sit outside for a while and hopefully we'll get a glimpse of them. One problem I had trying to capture the northern lights with the GoPro is that I didn't have an external power source, so I was just using the batteries, and they don't last very long. So about 2 hours into the time lapse, because it was chilly on the evenings, the battery would, well, just die, as you can see here. We were going to spend another night along the Haugakusten, but a weather front came in and the forecast said it was going to rain all day and all night, so we decided to drive west. We found a camp spot, we put the awning up, and eventually the rain passed. So we're camping in bear territory. Sweden has around 2,900 brown bears, and they all seem to be concentrated in a fairly small area. There's a map online which gives you the details of where they are. They're kind of like just north of Mora, and on the map, like, the red shade is the highest density, which is, it's like 7 bears per square kilometre, which is yeah, that's a lot. But you know, the Swedes, they just don't worry about them. They don't carry bear spray or anything. I mean, the brown bears are the same species as brown bears in Russia and Finland and the US, but they're just much more shy. If they hear you coming, they'll get out of your way. If you make some noise around camp, they'll not come near you. They don't go into the towns for food, I don't think. They certainly don't come anywhere near the truck. When people are out camping, canoe camping or whatever, they don't do anything special with the food wrappers or the food. They don't put them in bear containers or anything. So yeah, not a lot to worry about really, even though they are around. On our last trip up here, where we did camp on the way up to Lofsdalen, we did see loads of bears scattered around, but we haven't seen any so far. But I think the last death from a bear in Sweden was 1902. That was the last confirmed death. There's been a couple of unconfirmed since then, but so yeah, even though you're camping amongst bears, you've got very little chance of seeing one, let alone having some kind of encounter with one. So we broke camp about half an hour ago. We got back on the gravel roads, and then we found this lovely spot here next to a lake. It's the first spot we found where you can drive down to the lake, and there's no houses here. Trish has been into the woods collecting lingonberries, so we're just gonna have stretch our legs for half an hour, do a bit of a bit of a walk, but yeah, this is a lovely area. You can get right down to the lakeside. Space for the truck. There's a boat and that down there, so it's obviously someone's fishing spot. As we make our way further west towards Lofsdalen and the Norwegian border, the landscape begins to change. We can see mountains and tundra in the distance, and there's fast flowing rivers with stunted birch trees. We arrive in Lofsdalen and spend a couple of nights at the campsite in the village. This was our third visit to this particular campsite, and it's one of my favourite places in Sweden. The campsite sits on the shore of Lake Lofsjon, against a backdrop of forest and mountains. Further up behind the village is an ever-expanding ski resort, which caters for the winter sports scene. There's also mountain bike trails and plenty of hiking opportunities. In the past, the area was used as a summer grazing territory for the local villagers before the forestry companies purchased the land. But after a few days' rest, we're back on the empty roads, heading west towards Norway. We called in at a garage to fill up, and we bought some firewood, so we've got some nice seasoned birch in the trasharoo. Hopefully we should be there within the next 30 minutes, but the scenery has changed. We can see mountains in front of us and a guy with a gun hunting moose. As we drive into the primeval forests of Gutulia, we don't need to leave the road to see wandering reindeer. These are domesticated animals, and they share the forests with other wild animals such as moose, bears and wolverines. Even though the reindeer are domesticated, it's still wise to view them from a safe distance. Captain's log, day 9. Or possibly day 10, I can't really remember. But we've crossed the border into Norway, and we're here in the Gutulia National Park, Norway's smallest and least visited national park. We came here 4 years ago and we found a lovely camp spot, but we turned up there about 45 minutes ago and it was rammed. Lots of people there. It is a Saturday and autumn hasn't quite kicked in with all its force just yet, so it's still quite mild. Lots of folk about enjoying themselves. So we decided to move on, and we found this other spot here with a cracking lakeside view, and there's a long drop toilet over there. There's a picnic bench and a couple of fire pits. So at the moment we think we're going to spend the night here. This trasharoo is not only good for carrying your trash, you can also fit a full-size bag of logs in there as well. So we've got some nice dry birch logs for the fire tonight. So this evening was the same as every other so far on this trip. We'd just enjoy a few of life's simple pleasures, a drink or two, we'd cook up some food and warm ourselves around the campfire, listening to the sounds of the forest as the night sets in.